All right, what is happening in Ukraine is going to wind up hitting us here at home. Make no mistake about that. It matters not only to our democratic ideals abroad, but to our homeland security. Ukrainian forces have taken back ground that Putin thought he was going to hold. So now he is upping threats of nuclear response and playing a game with annexation. Now, this is something that actually is a very dangerous piece of trickery. I spent time on the Ukrainian front lines at the end of June. It's amazing how American their ambitions are and their appetite to be free of an oppressor. It's much like our fight against England was many years ago. Their fight may well become our own if the hostilities don't end in Ukraine, and soon. So the questions: are we doing enough? How long do we have to decide? And what does this nuclear talk mean in terms of our decisions? We have the right guest to break this down tonight. Former Clinton Defense Secretary William Cohen and former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton. Gentlemen, thank you both for being on the show tonight. Secretary, I start with you. This talk of annexation is more dangerous than people may realize. What do we have to look out for in this proposition that if they annex it, then that means if Ukraine enters it, that they are directly attacking Russia? How dangerous is that as a proposition?
Well, first, Chris, let me congratulate you on your show and wish you the best going forward. I missed you in the past, and I'm glad that you're back on the air, so thank you.
Thank you.
It's dangerous because Putin, number one, doesn't believe in the law. We can say it's illegal what he's done, never be recognized, but Putin doesn't care whether we recognize it or not. He cares about seizing it by power and then threatening you with a retaliation that will make it unacceptable for the West to confront. So it's more about power than law, and he believes he has possession. That's 9/10 of the law. And what we have to do is make sure that we do whatever we can to help the Ukrainians to take back more land as fast as they can. Because as we're moving into the winter months, the more land they can get back, the harder it's going to be for him to move forward sometime in the spring. The danger is that he may be tempted, as he's losing land that he shouldn't have. As he loses that, he becomes weaker. When he becomes weaker, the danger is the probability of him turning to nuclear weapons goes up. So that's the danger we're in now, and everybody should recognize. I don't think he's bluffing. I think we'd have to take him seriously, and what we have to do is deter him as best we can, but then respond in a fashion that makes it unacceptable for him in the future. We can talk about that, but there are multiple plans that have to be considered.
Well, but no matter what the plan is, it's about how big the commitment is from the United States, both in terms of more equipment and whether there'll be boots on the ground. I know that you're aware of the reports that there is tactical help from the United States, both at home here and on the ground there. But do you believe that the United States needs to do more before this becomes a new move for the Soviet Union?
Well, I have to continue to do what we're doing, put the pedal to the metal, get everything we can there. All of he's requesting in terms of HIMARS, the highly mobile artillery systems that can reach into the Russian forces, getting more drone capability, armed drones, and every weapon we can that will take out the Russian soldiers and send as many back either wounded or dead.
Zelensky says it's not enough. Mr. Secretary, as you know, President Zelensky says it's not enough, that he needs a lot more equipment.
He's getting more. Well, we have a package just been approved. We've contributed about $13 billion so far, and more coming. It's not enough, but I think he needs more artillery to go with the HIMARS launchers. He needs many more artillery shells to go with it to keep that pressure on. But I think we're giving him enough. We're seeing what he's doing. He's taking back land faster than they were able to really get it in the first place.
Right.
So I think we're helping in a way that is still very calibrated to make sure that we're not taking NATO into the war directly if we can at all avoid it. It might become necessary down the line, depending if Putin were to try to use nuclear weapons. I think at this point we're calibrating it just about right in terms of keeping us supplying him, doing the fighting, and us providing the money and the technology and the training and intelligence.
Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for joining us, especially on the first night. I look forward to having you soon.
Great to be with you, Chris.
All right. Former Secretary William Cohen. Now I want to go to John Bolton, the former national security advisor for former President Trump. It's good to see you again. John, thank you for being on the show on this first night. Appreciate you.
Well, congratulations on coming back on, and glad to see you.
So you heard what the former secretary had to say. Do you agree with his assessment?
Well, I think it's generally I agree with it. I do think we're moving potentially into a very dangerous period here with a lot of upside but a lot of risk. The recent Ukrainian advances, literally just in the past few days in particular, really underscore the Russian army has not recuperated, it's not regained its footing. I have to say, over the past 7 months of this war, every time I think the Russians have hit a bottom in terms of their performance, they surprise me and it gets worse. So this is the point when I think the Putin threat of a possible use of nuclear weapons does become real, when the army may be on the verge of collapse because of Putin's purported annexation of four Crimean provinces. Russian territory itself is threatened in his view, and what that really does is threaten Putin's regime domestically in Russia, which is what he is most worried about. So I think we need to make it clear to Putin that if he did use a nuclear weapon, not only would there be severe consequences for the Russian military, there would be severe consequences for him.
But what does that mean, John?
Because
I want you to kind of make that more understandable, for the audience. The current NSA, National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, last week said the United States will, quote, respond decisively to any nuclear weapon, and said that the U.S. has spelled out in greater detail exactly what that would mean in top-level talks with senior Russian officials. Well, it certainly hasn't quieted them down. What could you do other than an exchange of nuclear weapons, which nobody would want?
Well, I think we should say publicly that if Putin did authorize the use of a nuclear weapon, he would be signing his own suicide note. And I think that needs to be clear publicly so that everybody in the Russian military, intelligence, domestic security conglomerate knows how much is at risk here. This is a very serious step, and as I say, we all know where that decision would come from, and he should bear the ultimate responsibility. He needs to know that. There shouldn't be any ambiguity on the point.
But do you think that he believes, and do you believe, that the United States has the ability to reach out and touch Putin in that way?
I think we can. I think we've demonstrated we've got that ability in giving Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Quds Force, an early exit, and we can find Putin as well. This is something that the use of a nuclear weapon here, the first time in war since 1945, this is a huge step. And if Putin can execute that maneuver and get away with it by staying in power, it is a terrible signal to Iran, to North Korea, to China. So I do think it's worth considering exactly how we're going to try and deter Putin from doing that. Let's face it, the fact this war began on February the 24th means the West failed. We failed to deter Putin from invading. We failed to deter him in 2014 as well. So these failures of deterrence, in his mind, I'm afraid, are giving him the wrong message.
Now the question is, what resolve will we have politically to make the right choices going forward so it doesn't get worse? Ambassador John Bolton, thank you so much. Appreciate you, especially on the first night. I'll see you again soon.
Very glad to do it.
All right. So there you have it. Two people from the left and the right, very much on the same page. The question is, will our current leaders do the right thing?